Ephesians is a prison epistle. It was written by Paul when imprisoned in Rome. His ministry was hindered, his character and his teachings were under question because of his imprisonment. Ephesians is not a problem-solving epistle. Paul is not preaching or teaching in Ephesians so much as he is praising God for who he is and for what God has done, as evidenced in the person and work of Jesus Christ and in the gospel. Our lesson starts with Paul expounding on the powerless, hopeless, lifeless condition of fallen man, enslaved by their own fleshly desires and dominated by a world around them filled with Satan. The tragedy of fallen man's dilemma is that he doesn't even realize his condition until he is saved. Like many of us today, we become so accustomed to the conditions that we live in that we accept the sinful acts right around us. Paul sums up the condition of lost man in one word: dead. To be dead is to be lifeless. To be dead is to be unable to help oneself. Verse 4 starts with, "But God." The words "but God" indicate an exception, a beacon of hope in despair. Paul proclaims that the condition of man in sin is not hopeless because God has come to rescue us through Jesus Christ. Why would God provide a way to escape from our own condition of sin? After all, we have done this to ourselves. Paul tells us that God was motivated by his mercy and by his love for us. God's love was so great that it was not a response, but a cause. Divine grace is not bestowed upon us because we are so worthy, because we have done anything or have any qualities that God sees good in. It is because of the goodness of God himself. As modern Christians, sometimes we drive past those begging on the street, turning our heads, judging them to be in their fallen state because of their own merit, because of their own sins. God did not treat us that way. With his great love, he gave us salvation from our own sins that we committed. God sent Jesus to the world to suffer and to die in the sinner's place. He did this so that he could demonstrate his grace and power, a love so great that it could change the world. Think of modern Christians that build houses or dig wells, dedicating a little bit of their time and effort in a small way to love others. They change the world for families in need. God wants us to demonstrate that non-judgmental love, not based upon loving a person because they love us, but initiating that love as a Christian. Paul wrote to emphasize that salvation is not because of our own works, though. God's grace is divine favor that is unmerited, undeserved. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and not that of yourselves. Men are saved by God's grace, not by works. At that time, this was a radical concept. Self-righteous Jews and Gentiles thought that we must work our way into salvation. While no amount of good deeds or merit will grant salvation, our faith in God, our love of God, our love of our fellow man inspires us to do good things for other people. Paul surprised the Christians at Ephesus as he proclaimed that salvation is God's gift through Jesus and not compensation for our own efforts. This lesson shows us the difference between us when we are separated from God and us when we are a part of God. The good news of the gospel is that we need not remain dead in our transgressions and sins, separated from God and destined for wrath. God has provided a way of salvation, one way by which sinners can become saints, and this way is Jesus Christ. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.